47 years ago tonight, man walked on the moon. And depending on how these next 110 days go, a lot of us might be thinking about trying to move there pretty soon. Trump versus Hillary starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
That is indeed the official Mike Pence theme song, as we talked about on night one. They, it's my computer's on. It's good though.
I was like, what is that?
That's how you know you're live, though. That's how you know you're live.
That's how you know. You know what? I didn't trust you, Zach. I had to make sure I left it on. That wasn't a mistake. Anyway, yes, you can't always get what you want. The Mike Pence theme song. You can't always get what you want. If you're a broadcast network and Mike Pence speaks 15 minutes into the local news out of prime time, if you end up, not getting him on your TiVo, maybe you're lucky enough to watch it. Maybe you don't have time. But we'll talk about Mike Pence a little later. I'm Christian Bladt. Welcome to night 2 of Trump versus Hillary. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at ChristianDMZ. We played some musical chairs tonight for no reason other than it seemed like fun. To my left, camera right, is, of course, Scott Moore at SMan80. Say hi.
I was going to say, hey, I wasn't sure when you were
I know.
I'm like, am I introducing myself? Is he introducing? What are we doing here?
And then in the middle, we have Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard. And down on the end, way on the opposite end of the desk, Chelsea Galicia, also at Chelsea Galicia. Welcome, gang.
Thank you.
And don't forget the show's Twitter, at TrumpHillary16. We've added a few followers. I won't say how many, but, we'd like a few more. Follow us there. You can like us on YouTube, comment on YouTube, and some people have. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Rate us on iTunes. So, night 3, the Republican National Convention. Ted Cruz. There's a lot of news that came from the Ted Cruz. I saw the front page of tomorrow morning's Boston Herald. Booze Cruz. I have to always call out great headline puns when I see them. That's New York Post worthy. That's great, actually. Booze Cruz.
Yeah.
I like that he started off, he played to the room. Someone explained to him who LeBron James was, and he knew to mention that, and talked about, how America's going to make a comeback just like the Cavaliers did. So I guess Hillary's Golden State. So we'll see how that goes. He had told some emotional stories. He talked about the little girl of the police officer that was shot in Dallas. I think he started strong, very heavy-handed, talking about the evil world that he wants to be free. Definitely threw out some red meat, some things like President Obama had once referred to ISIS as a JV team, so they like to throw that back at him. The Hillary, what difference does it make? So before we get to the end of the speech, we'll just sort of go down the line and see what people thought in general terms about what Cruz had to say. I'm going to start with Scott because I know Chelsea has a lot on this, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance. So your thoughts on Ted Cruz, Scott?
Well, I have to say it's the snub heard around the world. I mean, that to me was the big thing of his entire speech.
Yeah.
You can basically forget everything else.
That's a great point.
That he did not endorse Trump.
And he not only didn't endorse Trump, he very specifically said in November, vote your conscience.
Exactly.
And you can take that any way you want, but he's basically trying to say that you don't have to vote for Donald Trump. And someone who works here who doesn't like to be identified because of what their politics are, I won't say who it was, I was talking to them beforehand, he or she, and they were saying, it's like the point that he's making is, definitely show up and vote your conscience. If you don't like Donald Trump, don't forget to vote for the down ticket Republican candidates who are probably going to suffer for the people who are like, hey, I can't vote for Trump. I hate Hillary, but I can't vote for Trump. And, obviously there could be a lot of issues there. So that is definitely the main takeaway and how Cruz became the story of the night, which was not what was intended. I think that, the vice president, what they hope is the vice president-elect, but the vice presidential nominee, that should be the big story of the night. And it definitely wasn't. We'll have plenty to say about him, too.
Right.
Drexel, your thoughts on Ted Cruz? Was it really just overshadowed by, the fact that he didn't endorse Trump? And did everybody who didn't take notes like I did already forget about, and I don't mean here on the panel, I mean just out there in the world, did everybody forget about everything he said before that?
I think that Ted Cruz did exactly what Ted Cruz wanted to do.
Yeah.
From everything that Donald Trump during the campaign talked about his wife, or during the primary talked about his wife, talked about his dad. Ted Cruz wasn't going to come out there and endorse Donald Trump. He actually mentioned Donald Trump one time, and that was at the beginning, and that was congratulating him on being
on
the nomination. And that was it. That was the only time he talked about Donald Trump. John Farview, who's President Obama's former secretary, actually tweeted out and said, Cruz will be the only one able to credibly claim he's the conscience of the party. Marco Rubio, Paul Ryan, anybody who's looking to run in 2020 might not be the conscience of the party or what they think. Like we talked about yesterday, who embodies what the Republican Party is right now, and is that going to be Ted Cruz, is that Mike Pence, anybody who's looking to run in 2020? And Ted Cruz set himself up for 2020, and I think that's what he went there to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, on the PBS coverage, David Brooks said that Ted Cruz put a stick of dynamite under the entire convention, which I think is a great way to demonstrate what he actually did. So, Chelsea, you don't have any thoughts on Ted Cruz, do you?
Just a couple.
Okay, well then go ahead.
I want to start with one where I was pleasantly shocked to agree with him.
When he said that we need to build a wall?
How'd you guess?
I just had a feeling.
It's the line, Americans are furious that the political establishment ignores the will of the people.
That's absolutely, yeah.
I never knew that there was going to be something that I agreed with.
That sort of sentiment, I think you would, if you did a Google search on that sort of thing, you'd find a couple things, but they would all be on that sort of issue about, anti-establishment.
So I thought I would start with, the positive. And then a lot of it had to do with freedom. And, it's great for anybody watching who can't get behind freedom. Everybody loves freedom.
I love that George Michael video called Freedom. Yeah, exactly. See, I'm older, so I go for the George Michael video, yeah.
So he went through and listed all the types of freedom. Freedom to choose education, even if you're not as rich as Obama's or Hillary or Trump. Choose doctors, okay. Freedom from taxes, the IRS beating down your door. Obama was talking about tax reform 8 years ago. That didn't go anywhere, and it's not because I don't think the Democrats stopped it.
It's not for a lack of trying.
Right, yeah. Well, I think with Obama, and I don't want to get too sidetracked, he really, dug in on healthcare, and that was going to be hard enough that you kind of had to give up on pretty much everything else.
He used all of his capital basically to get that.
But anyway, back to your point, Chelsea.
So he just went on this list of freedoms, and then he got to abortion. I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting. How are you going to spin freedom of abortion? That turned into protecting life. All right, fine. But then I was like, freedom, how about, they're talking about taking care of veterans and choices in healthcare. I'm like, they just voted to not allow doctors in states where medical marijuana is legal to prescribe medical marijuana to veterans. That was up for vote, and they said no. So no choice on that. The Republican platform has decided not to be in favor of medical marijuana. So it's an odd thing to be not in favor of when your rallying cry is freedom.
Right, but if you're Republicans, that's like saying you're in favor of damn hippies, and that just goes so far back. I just feel like they couldn't possibly, if you're saying you're in favor of any kind of marijuana, you're in favor of all kinds of marijuana. It's sort of like we were talking about, gun reform last night. So,
well, that would be pretty consistent with the whole freedom thing too.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about freedom, the justice system, right? We have mass incarceration on a disgusting level. What about talking about the basic level of freedom for people to not be imprisoned so much? Many of them, at least 500,000 non-violent drug offenders in prison. So why don't we grant basic freedom to people who aren't really a danger to society? I think that would be a good one. Freedom, I guess they like a lot of freedom to destroy the economy.
I don't think that's what he said, though, was it?
No, he did not, but that's what occurred to me.
That's what occurred to you.
Yeah. And freedom to destroy the environment, I think, are other ones that would
Yeah,
round
I
out
think that's fairly consistent with the platform at the last few conventions. Look, I think it's interesting because I made a few notes on things that he said, and look, obviously part of it is pandering to the TV audience, not necessarily saying things that people in that room are really excited about.
Right.
But I mean, he actually said, "Gay or straight, the Bill of Rights protects all of us to live according to our conscience," and I don't know. Maybe Ted Cruz feels that. In terms of the Republican nominees, I would say Rand Paul is probably the only one who's like, "Hey, I don't want to get involved in that."
Yeah, I was surprised he actually said
Yeah, that really stood out to me.
That threw me off. It was
and
weird.
I think I went on a Twitter rant earlier tonight, or just a live Twitter rant, and I tweeted, I said, well, I don't think that the GOP platform, the 2016 GOP platform, does not reflect a majority of what Ted Cruz is out there saying, especially on social issues.
No, not at all. But it was weird for him to say that.
It was very odd for him
I
to
don't
say
know where
that.
that came from. That was.
Also,
I'm telling you, it was a 2020 setup.
Did you know
dope.
that we were allowing in members of ISIS? Because Ted Cruz wants us to stop admitting ISIS terrorists as refugees. I didn't know that we were doing
Right. Well,
that.
I think that's a fairly firm belief that some of like the Syrian refugees are not even sleeper agents. They're well disguised ISIS
Except
agents.
none of them have done anything if that's true.
But their argument to you would be they haven't yet because they're getting together or wherever their relocation camp is. And it's a very real concern for people in that room. So he knows what he's saying. He knew what he was doing from beginning to end. And I think Drexel, you nailed it right on the head. The guy insulted his wife. He insulted his dad,
His dad, right.
but his wife, and it was just like, that's we're never going to get past that.
Yeah,
point.
it's personal. It was personal,
and it became even more personal when on the floor, Heidi Cruz had to be escorted
I read
out
that,
because people were booing her and yelling at her,
and they were yelling at him too. That they wanted
Mm-hmm.
Trump. Someone on my Facebook said that Ted Cruz did a great job endorsing Gary Johnson, the third-party candidate, which is pretty much what he did. He's like, his name's not going to appear on the ballot, so unless you want to write in Ted Cruz, your choice basically would be Gary Johnson. But make sure you vote for the Republicans down ticket. That's basically what he said. And I like I said, that really overshadows everything from the whole night. Is the fact that not only didn't he endorse him, he said, you don't even have to vote for him. And I don't think anybody in the Trump camp should be surprised that this is what would happen. I was surprised that Ted Cruz was going to speak when they were putting the list together. I think, well, of course Cruz isn't going to speak, but I don't know. I mean, look, I'm not exactly in Ted Cruz's core demo, as we say, but the fact that he actually said that, I got to give him a lot of credit for that because, like you said, he's there to position himself for the future, whether that's 2020 or...
I think that the whole theme of the convention, when I look back on it, is going to be the theme of voting your conscience.
Yeah. Well,
absolutely. I think my biggest surprise, though, from the Trump camp is scheduling him on tonight. Like
on
the third night. Why wouldn't you put him up earlier?
Before
Monday, or in the smaller speakers earlier in the day, Monday or Tuesday. Like, to me, it was odd again that they would have set him up on a day when they probably had a very good idea of what he was going to say.
It's almost like what we talked about for next week. Like, you don't put Bernie Sanders on a second or third night. You put Bernie Sanders on the first night, and you get him out of the way. Get him out of the way, and you don't talk about him again Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Hey, now.
No,
but I mean, like, that's the general feel of it.
So why would you put Ted Cruz on the third night, and that's such a big important night? So once again, I'm like, what are they doing? What are they thinking?
And I think that it goes back to we've dealt with Melania this week. Now, what is Michelle Obama going to say? So, next week we can talk about Bernie Sanders all day, but it's going to be all about what Michelle Obama's going to say on Monday night.
What if she quotes herself?
She's going to quote.
I wonder, is she going to take something from Tiffany Trump's speech just to have it be this sort of segment? Before we move on from Ted Cruz, in the chat room on YouTube, for those of you watching us live, Will points out that Ted Cruz did a great job looking like the Penguin from Batman Returns. That was the Danny DeVito Penguin.
Yes.
And yes, I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. Did you see Donald Trump's tweet though about Ted Cruz?
I don't think I saw that. No.
So Chris Christie, Dana Bash was on the floor on CNN, and she asked him. She said, "What do you think?" And Chris Christie went, Chris Christie's trying to. He's like, "Please give me something in this administration if this happens."
Yeah,
which
or
is Attorney
if not,
General,
I'll be Ted Cruz's running mate.
Right.
Yeah, because he has nothing.
No,
right
but he went off the rails on Ted Cruz and just
I
said, he
missed
doesn't
that.
deserve to be all this stuff. And then Donald Trump tweeted later, he he didn't take the, he took the, he didn't, what did he do? He didn't honor the pledge. That's what Ted.
Right, the pledge that
Chris Christie was saying that
Chris
too.
Christie was saying that. Donald Trump tweeted that after and said, I saw this speech a couple hours before. He didn't honor the pledge, but, thank him for showing up, basically.
Yeah, and somebody pointed out that the pledge, I think, was made in that venue.
It was.
Yeah,
it actually was during one of the debates.
It was Paul Ryan.
Yeah.
Paul Ryan said, I made the, basically Paul Ryan's like, look, I made a pledge. I said I was going to vote for whoever the nominee was, which was funny how that backfired, because the whole idea of that notion of pledging to vote for the nominee was so that Trump didn't run as a third-party candidate.
Right.
They, I think, didn't expect that it was going to actually be them. Then saying like, I guess I got to vote for Trump now, But
for Trump, during the entire primary, he said he didn't think he was going to honor the pledge. So,
right, that's what I thought.
Now he's expecting other people to honor the pledge.
That would be the crazy thing if he doesn't honor the pledge in November and he doesn't vote for himself and he votes for Gary Johnson. I mean, who knows?
Donald Trump is voting for Hillary.
Exactly.
Yeah, he has before. Why won't he again?
Why won't he again? Right. His kids probably will.
So then, to do some damage control a little bit later, they bring in Newt Gingrich, and she was introduced by Callista Gingrich, and people were saying, what is she doing there? As someone who booked talk radio for a very long time, if you want Newt, a lot of the time you have to take Callista as well. They write books together, so it's a package deal.
She combs his hair.
Yeah.
She wipes him down.
Right, exactly.
Oh, I thought you were serious.
You know what? There's no guarantee that that's not accurate. So she comes out, and look, Newt does some damage control, and he says, how great is Donald Trump that he lets people come speak at this convention without having to endorse him.
And he did some transitive property
and then he tries
thing.
he tries to say, vote your conscience means vote your conscience for anyone who will uphold the Constitution.
Yeah.
And clearly Trump will do a better job of upholding the Constitution than Hillary, so vote for Trump. So I don't know. We'll talk a little bit about Newt's comments. We won't spend too much time on it. But Drexel, what did you think about having Newt come in and do damage control? And was it effective?
I don't think that it was very effective, and here's why. Newt Gingrich came out there with a first night speech. He came out there with a "Make America Safe Again" speech.
Right.
It was predominantly a foreign policy speech, which Newt Gingrich has zero foreign policy experience. There is nowhere in Newt's past where I'm going to I actually believe Newt Gingrich on foreign policy, or actually take what he says as a credible, and he's a credible person to listen to. He talked about Trump's infrastructure program. If you've ever been to DonaldTrump.com, there is no infrastructure program. There is nothing, there's nothing about the Trump policies that he's bringing forth to the American people that says, hey, this is going to be a great program for the American people. He certainly didn't do a great attack on Hillary at all.
No, yeah.
Which he could have been effective, having lived the Clinton administration in the 90s. So I don't know if Newt Gingrich was out there. I think he was just out there because he likes the camera, and I think it was like Newt's last hurrah. So I think he could have been a lot more effective on the first night, and maybe that speech with somebody else. Like, he could have said something else, but that speech coming from somebody else's mouth on the first night.
Right, absolutely. The other thing I know about Newt from booking talk radio for so long, he always has a book, and so
maybe he's going to come up with a foreign policy book.
Right, it could be one of the children's books that he writes with Callista about an elephant that learns about American history, and I'm serious about that. Look it up. Look, he did have some good points, and I know. Look, Newt Gingrich is one of those people. He's very polarizing, but he's very smart. Just unfortunately for people on the left, the way that he synthesizes that knowledge drives him crazy. And he had a couple of good points. He accumulated some of the terrible atrocities that are attributed to radical Islamic terrorism. And there was a stat, I don't know where he got it from, but it really jumped out at me. Since January 2015, 30,000 people have been killed at the hands of terrorists. And I'm going to assume it came from somewhere. And let's say that it's way inflated, and that's 10,000. That's still a lot, and I think that this is, like you're saying, Drexel, this is what they were supposed to hammer us with on Monday, and they couldn't get their act together. And I mean, he makes the point that Donald Trump knows that we're at war with radical Islamic terror. And there are a lot of people on the left that say that, no, we're not at war with them. It doesn't matter what we think, because they are certainly at war with us. And the other interesting stat was that people throw around numbers like, well, only 9% of Muslims in Pakistan view ISIS favorably. But Pakistan has such a huge population, 9% is 16 million. So, it's a problem, and that speaks very well to the interests and concerns of that room. Scott, do you think that he definitely was preaching to the choir, but in a way that they were all happy to stand up and sing hallelujah?
No, I think, like, going back to what you were saying about Monday night, because that's what Monday night was supposed to be about. Right. But he was playing exactly what they wanted with that fear card, and he was playing the fear card because when he started talking in comparison to World War II and all these other atrocities, and he made it sound like it was worse now than back during World War II and other times, I was a little bit put off by that, because that was really, really playing that fear-mongering that I didn't think was necessary, but I got what they were trying to do. He was trying to go on that fear tactic and that feared card to get people to go out and vote, and like Republicans are the only ones that can protect you.
But that's the problem with this night. Like, I don't want people to think that I thought that it was a bad speech. I think that it was an effective speech for the content that it was, and it just should have been on a different night.
Absolutely.
The problem is, this was supposed to be a night about Mike Pence and about lifting everybody up, making them excited about this vice presidential nominee, so he could get out there and give a speech that was somewhat effective.
Yeah.
The only person that I know we're going to talk about him that was effective tonight was Eric Trump.
Yeah, I agree.
To our point, So why are the kids making better points than these career politicians coming out there? And
Don Jr. and Eric, I think, would be a great ticket somewhere down the line. Maybe not for president, but for some local board or something. I wanted to give Chelsea a chance to chime in on Newt. Did you have any thoughts on the former speaker, what he had to say, and the way he carried himself? And
the perfect fearmonger,
right.
And he laid it out very calculated, logically included stats.
Sure.
Told a very cohesive timeline story.
He's a great orator.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
So that part was all good, and so you can say, oh yeah, that makes sense, And then the conclusion, though, which you say how he synthesizes it, is just totally wrong. I mean, we have spent billions and billions and billions of dollars on our military. We have the largest military in the entire world by far, and so that is not the key ingredient to making us safe, because the military right now it's gone up. Even Obama has raised military spending.
Sure, yeah.
And that hasn't made us safe, because here they are. And I don't think that Republicans seem to acknowledge that our military is part of the reason why these people are so angry at us. The other night when Melania was giving her speech, there were drone strikes in Syria trying to go after ISIS, but 56 civilians were killed. At least 56 civilians were killed, including 11 children. And if we don't think that those people that were affected, that lost family members and their children, are going to be angry and then find each other and then later take that anger out on us again, even though we intended to go kill ISIS and not those civilians. If we don't understand that those people are going to do something with that energy, and likely they're going to do something back at us at some point, we just don't understand the way humans work. So the military hasn't been a successful stop to it, because in fact, in a lot of ways, it's caused it, contributed to it. So it just doesn't make sense to me, the solution of must be bigger military until what? It's 3/4 of our budget. I mean, it's already half. I just don't understand the logic behind it.
We talked briefly at the beginning of the show just about the president's drone program. Obviously, I'm not emphatically for the president's drone program, but I do support the president's drone program. And I think that I would much rather have. I know President Obama, has contributed another 5,000 some odd troops to on the ground in Syria, but I'd much rather have drones flying overhead than having boots on the ground. And I think that's where a majority of the American people are when it comes to national security.
Right.
Yeah, like nobody wants to. It's like, oh, Hillary Clinton's for war. Like nobody's for war. Nobody's for abortion. Nobody's. Everybody has this idea in their head, and I look at it and go, the first role of the president of the United States is to protect American interests. Right. At the end of the day, and if that means sending our stuff overseas, and then not bringing it back home, then that is what I expect the president of the United States to do. Now, whether or not Republicans have this idea in their head that they know how to spend money on the military a bit better, excuse me, they're the ones cutting veterans benefits.
Exactly.
They're the ones not raising military pay. They're the ones not focused on military families. And it's been this president who has increased the military spending specifically for military families, not necessarily building other programs, but spending on military families. So I think it's very hard for Republicans to be trusted when it comes to the military, not just on a program basis, but on supporting the troops, as they like to say, from the ground up. So.
Right.
Well, obviously, this is a good time to say we want to know what all of you think. Those of you not watching live and able to chat on YouTube, we're on Twitter at TrumpHillary16, so you can tweet us there. And then, so let's move it on to Eric Trump. So he obviously had very kind things to say about his father.
He loves him so
Of course he does. He talked about how Trump defied expectations, and I was at that point. My wife was home from work, and it was on, and she said that when Eric Trump said that his father has inspired multiple generations, including millennials like himself. She just sort of was like, millennials. This guy is shouldn't identify with any real generation. I feel like it's very different. He told a great story that I don't know if it means that Donald Trump should be president, but he told a story about an ice skating rink and how much money the city of New York wasted trying to get it done. He just threw $2 million at it and got it under budget and early. So I'm like, well, that is a great story. That is the kind of thing that Donald Trump can be good at. Right. So. Maybe he could be the czar of ice skating rinks.
But how do you bring something in under budget when you have to spend $2 million?
Right.
When I was already over budget,
so
you can't come in under budget.
It means that he threw in $2 million and it cost less than that $2 million.
Oh, got it.
I thought about that.
I thought about it too, but I actually thought it was a good story, though. I mean, I thought it was well said in the sense that it made it seem like, oh, here's this guy, here's the businessman, and he invested into the community and. So
he made it sound like it brought the city under budget. Just listening to it, you're like, you're convincing people of something that didn't happen.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. And I want a status report on the state of that ice skating rink now.
Yeah, exactly.
How is it doing?
Exactly.
Have we seen its birth certificate? No, but and so
how profitable is it? Is it making millions?
Right, exactly. And then, obviously there's plenty of red meat in these things, and he talked about that we need Christmas from public use, and I didn't know that we were going to get the war on Christmas at the convention, but it came up, and the Pledge of Allegiance taken out of our schools. So, he really pushed all the right buttons, but these Trump kids. Don Jr. and Tiffany. Looking forward to Ivanka tomorrow night. I feel like the kids are they're kind of running away with the show in terms of the quality speeches, or is it just that we're all too kind to say anything bad about it?
They're the only ones talking about
That's
Trump.
true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So the only ones talking.
They're the only ones who
mention
know
him.
They're the only ones who like him. That's probably what it comes down to. What Chelsea, your thoughts on Eric Trump and not the individual, his speech?
Yeah, the only I like the Oprah story about how.
Explain what it was for people who missed it. I did have that in my notes, but go ahead and explain it.
I was an avid Oprah watcher, but apparently not this episode, where Oprah asked Trump, will you run for president? And he said, if America gets bad enough and like needs me badly enough, then I will do it.
My white horse, and I'll come and save the day.
Yes. So Eric made this sound like this was a move out of sacrifice, self-sacrifice.
He talks about that all the time. Trump talks about sacrificing his business all the time. So this is not surprising.
So that struck me. And then the other thing about, my father taught me about integrity and honesty. And I did, again, one of those moments where I was looking around like, is he serious right now? Because we just know factually Donald Trump is incorrect so much of the time, that to say that a value of yours is honesty, is that you got from your father, is total BS.
Look, he doesn't.
Can Trump even argue that everything he said is not true? I mean, we just know
he does a tremendous job with the truth. He's going to be huge with the truth, and you're going to be blowing away by how good he is.
The most truth ever.
The truth to steal it from someone else. The
bigly
truthiest. So Drexel, I saw on Twitter you commented on something that Eric Trump said.
There's a lot.
There's a specific one which I'll let you start with this, and you can move on to everyone else. But but he made the point that Donald Trump is a person who does not need this job.
Right.
And you said that that was the most honest thing anyone said in this convention. I like that a lot. So talk about that, and then you can talk about Eric Trump in general.
He did, and I want to make sure I put it in context, right? Because I don't want anybody to say, "Oh, well, that's not what he said." He said, he started out by saying, "A vote for is a vote for a candidate who doesn't really need the job." I just took it out of not out of context, but I just condensed that down and just said basically it is what he said, a vote for a candidate who doesn't need the job. And Donald Trump does not need this job, and in my opinion, I know there's a lot of Trump fans out there, but that was the most honest thing that anybody ever said on that stage. I mean, to the point where we talked about yesterday, even Melania didn't really talk about Trump all that much in terms of their personal life. So nobody's getting out there except for Eric and except for Donald Jr., who's actually getting out there. Ivanka will do a much better job than anybody introducing her father tomorrow. But for the most part, that was stuck out to me in Eric's speech. There's a lot of other stuff. You talked about the red meat, talking about the Second Amendment, Pledge of Allegiance, certainly things that I don't think these liberal kids who went to Wharton actually believe what they're saying up there.
You mean these kids who aren't registered Republicans?
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
I'll start with the only positive thing that he said, other than don't need the country. But I truly believe that Trump does love the country, and that's what Eric tried to hit home, was he does love the country. Like, you can argue about his policies or whatever, but I think at the end of the day, Donald Trump is somebody that actually loves the country.
Because the rest of us and the other.
Not saying that they don't. I'm saying that in general.
Right.
I truly believe that anybody is going to run for the
There are
country.
people who firmly believe that Barack Obama hates America.
Right.
So, it is a point worth making about a candidate that, yes, I believe that Donald Trump obviously loves America,
the country,
and he loves the
but he just loves
opportunities that's
himself
afforded
more.
him. Of course.
That's the difference. Like, he loves America, but he loves himself more.
Yeah.
I also wrote down, he said, "My father is running for you." I think that was, they're trying to allude to the "I'm with her" portion of that. But at the end of the day, like I always say, his policies and everything, his rhetoric says something different, and he's not actually running for anything that other than Donald Trump himself. And then you brought up the ice skating rink, but I actually wrote down the hotel. He brought up the old post office in D.C. And I'm like, as if he was doing D.C. a favor, but he really was bringing another Trump business to D.C., and obviously that is not going to be done. He said it's going to be done, next summer or something like that. So it wasn't really doing the city a favor and saving this old post office, an old historic site. It was actually just bringing another Trump hotel to downtown D.C.
Right. We're running a little light on time at this point, so I wanted to move it on to Mike Pence. And unlike Mike Pence, we can't go long. So, Scott, your overall reaction to what Mike Pence had to say.
Well, I just want to add a couple things really fast about Eric. Is I thought he was actually better than Don Jr. at getting the message out about his father. I thought it was more coherent. The message was really on point. The only thing I disagreed with him was the big thing on infrastructure, when he was talking about his father traveling around the world and how bad our infrastructure is. I keep thinking, well, Republicans have been the ones that have been voting against infrastructure for years, so that was kind of laughable. And of course, he never mentioned anything with minorities when he was mentioning all these people that Trump was
for.
Yeah, it was for. No minorities at all mentioned. So that was an interesting point that stuck out. But Mike Pence, I have this weird. He looks very plasticky and weird, bizarre, but also he reminds me of Warren Harding. I know it's a weird.
Oh,
he has that. Yeah, I mean, really throwing it back, but he has that. Like, if I was going to central casting and I was going to cast a politician to play the role, it would be Mike Pence. He has that look. I didn't think that his speech really helped. I mean, and I kept thinking, because Ted Cruz was on earlier, this was the guy that he's tweeting and was supporting right up through the primary on May 3rd in Indiana, and it just came across so fake and weird for him to be now pretending to support Trump. And the whole beginning, I'm a Christian, a conservative, and a Republican in that order, and trying to throw out that red meat to everybody, and it just, to me, really fell flat. The political tiptoeing around. He just says what he wants. Speaking of Trump, no political correctness, and that was supposed to be okay, so now Trump can say whatever he wants. Right. And of course, the big one about this Hillary Clinton wanting the promotion because she's secretary of the status quo.
That was funny.
It was funny, and there were a couple ones that made me laugh. Some of his little things were funny, but I still think overall his speech was not strong enough and I just kept thinking about it.
I mean,
because of what he needed to present.
It was a little reminiscent of what I kind of remember Republican VP candidates' speeches like. It was a very Jack Kemp kind of speech.
Well, yeah,
you know,
I could see
it's
Jack
fine.
Kemp with that.
You know,
But there was nothing.
But he's no Jack Kennedy.
He's no Jack Kemp either.
Yeah, no Jack Kemp either.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that he talked about was that the national debt has doubled in these 8 years under President Obama. I thought it might be worth pointing out that the previous 8 years under President Bush it also doubled. So, you know, it's just one of those things. It's like, yeah, it's a fact, but you know, I think that's just kind of what happens.
Exactly.
Again, keeping in mind that we only have a few minutes, Drexel, your thoughts on Mike Pence?
First off, I thought Paul Ryan did a better job of introing Mike Pence.
Are we going to see him every night, by the way?
He has the Mike speak of the House than Donald Trump did announcing him last week.
Right,
absolutely.
And better than Mike Pence's speech. I thought Paul Ryan's intro was better.
Right. I thought he did a really great job of introducing his family. I mean, this kind of all-American family, talked about his immigrant grandfather. He talked about his family building their business.
I liked when his mom stood up.
His mom stood up.
Introduced his mom.
I think he loves his mom more than he loves his wife. Or at least the mom got a lot more lives.
She's a special lady.
And then his
And she's
lieutenant colonel.
old. She gets attention when you're old. And you're standing up, and everyone's like, "Oh,
It's like a
old
5-minute long ovation.
It was his lieutenant colonel, Marine son. I thought that was a really great
very
introduction
nice,
to his family. You know, he talked about being a former Democrat. You know, before he voted for Ronald Reagan. And then he talked about his leadership in Indiana as if it was going to be able to help Donald Trump. Yeah, right. Like as the the presidency, like, you know, wrote down points about his leadership in Indiana's reasons why Trump should be president. Like, I don't think that's not going to help him out any. And then I wrote down if calling HRC the Secretary of Status Quo is the only thing that Mike Pence can come up with, I think Republicans are going to be in a bit of trouble if that's all that Mike Pence can come up with in terms of an attack on Hillary Clinton.
Right.
He's not the attack dog, as we were kind of saying yesterday. He's the opposite. Yeah.
So, Chelsea, I know that what stood out to you was that he said about Donald Trump that you can't fake good kids. You don't have to only talk about that, but start with that. And give us your thoughts on...
I was like, really? I think you can fake great kids.
Yeah, I think we all know
minutes.
people who fake how great their kids are, or how well they're doing, and then when you really scratch beneath the surface, like, oh my God, their kids are so messed up.
Right, how perfect they are.
These do seem like good kids, but I feel like you can absolutely fake good kids. Yeah,
for sure. I thought it was kind of cute how he was trying to play the... you know, Donald Trump is loud and colorful and charismatic, and they picked me because they're looking to balance out the ticket. Oh, how cute and humbling he is. Humility. He's trying to bring humility to the ticket. It's sorely lacking. He was shockingly candid about how surprised he was to be selected.
Yes.
I thought that was very interesting. And he said, "I'm new to this campaign." Didn't say that he had supported Cruz before, but it was like, you probably want to leave these details out, but thanks for being that transparent. And some of the things just like didn't make sense to me. Like, Americans have been told that this is as good as it gets. Really? Who said that?
I hope not, by the way.
Right?
I don't think anybody's been saying
that. And then
that.
Hillary invented Obamacare, but didn't Romney do a very similar...
Well, there was Romneycare in Massachusetts. Yeah,
the Heritage Foundation. That's all conservative.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, I don't know. I don't care enough to compare what Hillary proposed during her husband's administration and what it was. By the way, in the chat room, username DVD78 said that Pence did fine. We're not saying he didn't do fine. He just it was, you know, what you want out of your nominee, and look, she's a very polarizing figure. In fact, most people hate her on both sides. Sarah Palin's speech in 2008, that was, you know, she like burned the place down.
Right.
And the problem was McCain was never going to deliver a speech that even compared to that. But, you know, that's what we're talking about.
And I thought Paul Ryan's speech was good in 2012.
I do have to say that probably my favorite line of the Mike Pence speech was when he said that Hispanics respect the laws. And I was like, oh, he forgot to run that by Donald, because Donald says that we're all rapists and criminals, so they're already not on the same page. I don't know how that's going to bode in the future partnership. But Other than that, it's kind of
Can
like
we
womp womp.
talk about the weird air kiss thing too? I mean, that was awkward and weird at the beginning.
yeah.
I mean, all that.
Yeah, that made me wish that my DVR had run out earlier.
I think I just want to point out that we talk a lot about obviously to that user's point, just talking about Mike Pence did fine. Yeah, we are perfectly I might be supporting Hillary Clinton and a lot of different candidates down the ballot here in California, Kamala Harris. If you're a Loretta Sanchez fan, that's fine, but that doesn't mean we can't look objectively at these speeches and say, here is exactly what we think about these. Next week we're going to be doing the same thing. Whether or not we believe President Obama's speech was effective, whether or not we believe Bill Clinton's speech was effective, which we know Bill Clinton's speech will be effective. Chelsea and Bernie Sanders, for the most part, are these speeches
then I
going
have
to be...
to live the 8 years again of people asking my name, Chelsea, and then being like Chelsea Clinton. I was so happy that was over, and now I'm going to relive it.
She's going to be
The
introducing
90s
Hillary
are
next
back
week.
again.
So we can look at everything pretty objectively.
Yeah.
So
Well,
hopefully
I want to
people
grab
understand
one quote from Mike Pence before I dive into a little bit of the feedback, even though we only have a few minutes. One of the things that Mike Pence said was a lot of people out there feel that Democrats have taken them for granted. And that's exactly who's voting for Donald Trump. I think a lot of people are like, I don't understand how anyone could vote for Donald Trump. And there's a lot of reasons why you might. It could be that you hate Hillary. It could be that, you do feel like that this is a party that takes you for granted. Right. And there aren't a lot of minority people that are out there speaking on behalf of Trump. But those who are do feel like, Democrats always figure I'm going to vote for them. Right. I choose something different. And in fact, tomorrow night, we're going to have via Skype a friend of mine from New York who's going to stay up very late to do the show with us. Her name's Shalair Miller, and she's very funny. She's outspoken. And I point out that she's black because of the fact that she is very outspoken in her support of Trump. So it'll be very interesting to get her standpoint. That was some of the most consistent feedback that we got was, hey, why not one Trump supporter on there? And I did point out to one of the users, this is Hollywood. It's not like they're all knocking on the door looking here. We are going to have somebody on the panel. I thought he was going to be with us tomorrow night. He won't be with us until next week. But
just in time.
Yeah, right, exactly. No, he's going to have plenty to talk about. Yeah, right, exactly. And so we had some great interaction with a Storage Yard resident who is actually Charles in San Jose. And look, we appreciate you listening and watching the show. And I think in general he appreciated the fact that AfterBuzz was doing this, having a political show. He just wanted his voice to be heard. And I think you guys had a great back and forth. Drexel, you commented on him, and that this is hardly a Hillary Clinton love fest. We're not really talking that much about her because you do not love Hillary Clinton. And next week is going to be her convention where there'll be a lot of her negatives to point out. And we'll critique the speakers in that at next week's convention in Philadelphia just as much as we have there.
But it will be a Hillary love fest next week.
At the convention.
At the convention, it absolutely will be.
This chair will be a Hillary love fest next week.
Side of the
Right, exactly. Well, we'll see. I mean, because it just depends. Sometimes. What if she's tired Hillary? Is she the Hillary that's going to cough for 4 minutes? Is she the Hillary that is angry? That could help her.
Screaming Hillary. I don't know.
Right, exactly. So we'll be back tomorrow night. As I mentioned, we'll have a special guest via Skype, and we will react to the big night, the Donald Trump speech, for myself at Christian DMZ, Christian Bladt, for Scott Moore at SMan80, and Drexel Heard at Drexel Heard, Chelsea Galicia at Chelsea Galicia. Don't forget, we're at Trump Hillary 16. Follow us there, like us on YouTube, comment, rate us on iTunes. We'll see you guys tomorrow night, 10 p.m. Pacific time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.